Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another recap here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. I'm your host, Sean Vowells, and I'm joined by Joe Meade. And tonight, Joe and I are recapping the college football playoff semifinal at the Cotton Bowl between Ohio State and Texas. Joe, we had a long preview on this one. This was the game certainly that went more of the way that I thought it would. You have the Ohio State Buckeyes going not into enemy territory, but certainly not 50-50 territory down there in Dallas. And they get the job done. Buckeyes 28, Texas 14. That scoreline does not tell the whole story, as the Longhorns were 1 yard away from tying it pretty late in this one. But, Joe, Texas had to not lose this one in the first quarter to have a chance. They didn't. Their defense was able to hold enough, gave their offense a chance. They weren't able to get the job done. So, overarching thoughts on this one as the Buckeyes move on to the national championship.
Overarching thoughts, kind of like the last video, and this is in completely different context. Ohio. Sean, sorry, I lost. You lost me for 1 second, but I'll just continue. Similar to the last game, Sean, Ohio State made two key plays at the end of each half. You know, the Travion Henderson 75-yard TD pass/run, whatever you want to call it, where he was untouched. That was a beautifully schemed play by Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, and ultimately they outschemed Pete Kwiatkowski at this venture in the game. And then on the tail end of it, right, the obvious second and goal from the one. Now, a lot of people are going to complain that on first and goal, that could have been a pass interference. It wouldn't have mattered. They were still at like the half-inch line. To throw a halfback toss on second and goal to lose 8 yards is pretty inexplicable. You know, we talk a lot about some, I'm not going to use curse words, some pretty crappy coaching decisions. You know, the Pete Carroll and Darrell Bevel not running at the 1 yard line with Marshawn Lynch. I think this one has to be up there. A halfback toss when you're a yard away from tying probably the national title favorites. And the way their Texas' defense played, it certainly wasn't out of the question that they could stop Ohio State and perhaps get the ball back to win it in regulation, or at worst get to overtime. With all the momentum they had gained back in the third and fourth quarter, to see that happen for Texas was pretty disheartening if you're a Longhorn fan or SEC fan or just an Ohio State detractor. So ultimately, Ryan Day, this is his best win as the Buckeye head coach, I think, without a doubt. He proved that Sarkisian, who's also a top 10 coach by many accounts in this universe we live in, Ryan Day outcoached him from the first half to the second half. He was patient. He picked his spots correctly. That fourth down call him and Chip Kelly made with Will Howard, that's how I'm going to view this game. You know, Jack Sawyer made the plays. Jack Sawyer got pressure. And Texas made some great plays as well. But ultimately, their playmakers didn't make the plays. Matthew Golden was out a lot of the game. And their leading receiver was Jaden Blue, who's a running back. These Texas receivers who we praised all year, you know, Ryan Wingle, Silas Bolden, DeAndre Moore, Gunnar Helm, the tight end. They were held completely in check, similar to the way Oregon was. And Texas's defense played its hearts out. Unfortunately, you thought if Texas only gave up 21 points on defense, they had a real shot to win this. Well, we didn't account for the fact their offense was going to fail them at the last stage of the game. And they did, and you have to give a lot of credit to Ohio State for that. Aside from the boneheaded decision from Sarkisian, Ohio State executed plays in the right moment. They made their mistake, their one interception at the beginning of the third quarter, and it didn't end up costing them as much as it costed Steve Sarkisian and Quinn Ewers on the last play of effectively the last play of the game when Jack Sawyer ran that back.
All right, Joe, well, at least first, you had the Texas turnover on downs to start the game, and then an Ohio State touchdown, Texas punt, and then Ohio State was driving again. It looked like this one was going to be, all right, here we go again. Ohio State's going to blitz this team out of the water. You have that Travion Henderson 15-yard penalty that it's easy to say, Joe, but I think if that doesn't happen, Ohio State wins easily. It does, and he makes up for it with quite the play to end the half. But, you know, when Texas does score their touchdown on their last drive of the first half, you looked up and it's 7-7. You're like, wow, Ohio State feels like they really are winning this game, and they're not. And then the momentum switch comes with the 75-yard screenplay, and then all of a sudden it's 14-7 Ohio State. I think they deserve to be winning at the end of the first half, but like that play is just such a gut-wrenching play to end a half, considering you don't get the ball first in the second half. Now that they did turn it over, but Joe, I think that play really put Texas behind it. They fought so hard to get back into the game. They scored. They earned themselves a tie at halftime, and then just like that, you give up that play. The defenders were too far back for a screenplay. That's why you see a lot of screenplays on 3rd and 22 and all that in all levels of the game. And Henderson got enough speed to break through that line and take it all the way. But, Joe, that play, I think, with it being at the end of the first half and what happened at the end of the second half, might go a little bit under the radar. But that was the most important play for me.
Absolutely, Sean. And I want to talk about what I thought was another important sequence. I thought in the middle of the fourth quarter, the Ohio State drive for them to go up 21-14, Texas's defense had 3 opportunities to get them off the field, and Ohio State masterfully schemed. They had the 18-yard pass to Carnell Tate on the first 3rd and 8, and let's face it, Sean, up to this point, Texas was winning the complementary football battle in the second half. Even after the pick, they pinned Ohio State deep, had them back on their own side of the field. Texas got the ball at their own 35, scored a touchdown. And then the sequence where Texas went 3 and out with great field position. You can't ask for better field position, really, than starting at your own 40. Tie game against Ohio State. Texas going into the game would have laughed and loved to take that proposition, and they just didn't execute it at all. The first play of the fourth quarter kind of set the tone. Quinn Ewers missed Matthew Golden on a play that both of them would normally make, and Ohio State, the 18-yard pass to Carnell Tate on the first 3rd and 8. The 3rd and 9, right after they got a false start, G. Scott 7 yards, and then Will Howard 18-yard run. I think that was, for me, the turning point. That's where Ohio State got all the control they had lost when Will Howard threw the first pick and got it completely back. And Quinshon Judkins, a lot of people have criticized him this year. Maybe not as crazy a year, which I still think is a bit ridiculous because I think he's been really efficient in their biggest games this year, except for one. He's within short yardage packages, or when he needs to pick up 3 or 4 yards, he will do so. And complementing the game Henderson had, I think both of them together, although only 78 yards combined rushing, they got those 78 yards and they were really impactful, each of those yards. So I look at Ohio State, and I definitely don't think they played their best game as Texas did it. But Ohio State, even not playing their best game, was efficient when they had to be. They made the big plays. And similar to the last game, the Notre Dame-Penn State game, the team that made the big plays, deservedly so, is in the national title game.
And the Will Howard play, Joe, again, to me, he was never giving that ball up. I just think he wanted it in. Now, it would. I'm pretty sure it was a designed run. There's a chance that it wasn't. But I think even the announcers said it too. Like, you got to wonder if Will Howard's going to call his own number here. And, he probably should have scored. He ends up not, and they end up scoring anyway with Judkins. But it just seemed like the Texas just didn't quite have enough. Their defense was so good for the entire game, really. Jeremiah Smith, Joe, just 1 catch for 3 yards. Carnell Tate, obviously, with the huge game, 7 for 87. But the only receiving touchdown they gave up was the Henderson screen pass. So you're able to do enough in the air. You keep them under 100 rushing yards. Like, Texas's defense really came to play. They had to for a chance. And, Joe, I think they did have a chance here. And just Ohio State made more plays. And then, obviously, with the game on the line, their senior leader on defense makes the best play of his career. There was he got a lot of criticism from Ohio State fans after the Michigan game, saying that he's going to leave, without a victory against the Wolverines. Well, he's 1 game away from getting over that just about as good as you can. He makes the big play. To be fair, he did make a couple of big plays in the Michigan game too, but for them, they're 1 game away from probably washing away one of the worst losses of the season in all of college football. And it just seemed like this game was pretty similar to the Michigan game, Joe, in terms of being very, couple turnovers, not very high scoring. And Michigan made the big defensive play in that game, but it was Ohio State that makes the big defensive play here. And it just seems like they might have grown since that tough day in Columbus.
Without a doubt, they've grown. And also, I think Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, if you turn on the film from even the Indiana game and the Penn State game in November versus today, it's completely different.
And I think, Joe, this was the most important coaching game from them because, I mean, they blew out their first two opponents. Great job preparing and all that, but they had to make some adjustments here, and it worked.
Not only did it work, Sean, they went against what they wanted to all year. They wanted the run to guide them. The last three games, the passes guided them, and the runs complemented them in closed games. And in this case, the run didn't have to close the game, considering their defense did. And that's something Ohio State's done all year in the red zone. We've talked about that. The Penn State game, they won that game because their red zone D turned up. The Oregon game, they really should have won. The first game in Eugene on October 12th, they should have won because their red zone D held them to field goals and turned them over in a few instances on downs. And they should have won the Michigan game because they intercepted a pass at the goal line and stopped them on fourth down near the goal line. And that's something that's going to be a big factor the next game without going too much into our preview. You know, that's something that's been consistent the entire season from October to today. So Texas, certainly you could fault Sarkisian, but at the same time, I think Ryan Day really got in his head. And maybe Sark's ego took over, right? The two best play callers in college football, this is what the game was labeled as. I think Chip Kelly's helped Ryan Day a lot this year, and that's a credit today because he brought him on and really surrendered a lot of play calling abilities, which a lot of people accosted him for at first. Don't think too many people are going to do that now. So Ohio State, they're one game away from really probably pulling a 2017 Alabama is the best way I could put it after they lost to Auburn. Kind of got humiliated a little more, albeit Auburn was a win away from the college football Final Four that year, and Michigan this year is, you know, we don't have to go into that until our season eulogy for them. So not much else to say, man. Ohio State, the class of 2021 guys showed out. JTT, Travion Henderson, and then, you know, some of the young stars, Carnell Tate, even Emeka Ibuka. I know 5 catches for 51 yards, but a lot of those critical second downs that were longer and third downs he converted on. So stars showed out for Ohio State. Stars showed out for Texas, just not enough. And the coaches certainly let Texas down too.
In terms of in-game, I think preparation was pretty good from Texas. They took Ohio State out of a lot of the things that they wanted to do, but Ohio State's defense deserves a lot of credit too. And, you know, it's easy to go back now, Joe, but first and goal from the 1, I think you try and run it up the middle at least twice. I know that was a sign of respect to Ohio State's defensive line not to do that, but it's not even a yard. You know, I think that certainly it's easier to look at it now. Had the pitch play worked, we would be saying, oh, what a great play not to go right at the teeth of that defense. But ultimately, they still had more chances after, too. They had a third and goal from the 9, you know, and then the strip sack comes on fourth and goal. But Texas, very close. Not SEC champions this year, but Joe, like Penn State in our last video, I think Texas is going to be here more times than not. I know the SEC is loaded, but so is the Big Ten. So with Arch Manning getting the reins next year, I would expect the Longhorns to be here in this 12-team playoff more times than not.
Yeah, and kind of similar seasons for Penn State and Texas, too. That's a really good... You know, both these games were decently similar in terms of the theme of the one critical play at the end of... Really, you can pick out one play and it going differently, affecting the entire outcome of the game and the title game. There's probably an alternate universe where Texas is gearing up to play against Penn State in the title game. But that's not this multiverse we're in, so we're just going to have to preview the other one in our future video. But, Sean, I think Sarkisian and Texas probably have a higher ceiling right now than Penn State just because, you know, they have a lot more young quarterbacks, a lot more young receivers in there. I do think Penn State has to do some more soul-searching, but in terms of just making it specifically about this game, Texas proved they're one of the best teams in the country. Their talent could easily hold up against Ohio State's, which is seen as the probably the number one in the country by now. So certainly on the right track, big picture, just in the immediate aftermath, it's hard to not feel bad if you're a Longhorn fan.
So, Joe, Texas, like Ohio State, there's some differing numbers here and there. Everyone likes to talk about Ohio State's $20 million roster. There are reports that Texas is close if they're not there, too. So that is now 2 rosters on the same level of money-wise that Ohio State has beat in a row in Oregon and Texas. And they're one step away from what would be one of the most impressive national championships in what they've had to go through this year. But, Joe, that's all we have for them today in this video. Thank you for tuning into this recap. Please be sure to check out our other videos and our national championship preview, which is coming soon.